So we'll get stuck in then. So yeah, as I say, a few little goals and just some things to focus on. Certainly through the autumn, it can be really good just to give yourself a focus, which will help motivate you with your training and keep up the riding. Now, the first sort of tip or idea that I've got for you this evening is maybe going to try a new route, a new ride, or a particular climb that you may not have done this year that you wanted to do. I know that I myself certainly have a bucket list every year of routes, my favourite routes, favourite climbs and rides that I really set out and like to do as part of the year. And if I find that I normally get to September now and there's maybe, I know that I've still got 2 routes that I would still like to go and do this year, then that's a great focus and motivation to have. Maybe if you've got a weekend or somewhere you've got a bit more time where you can go and do a ride or plan that in, then that's obviously a bit of motivation there, because you know that you're probably going to want to be able to go and firstly complete that route. It may be a longer route, as I mentioned, with a lot of elevation gain, and that obviously makes that ride even more special, or going to do that ride and completing it a great sense of achievement and a good accomplishment. So having a new ride, a new route maybe that you haven't yet tried as well, that you may have spoken to some of your cycling buddies about, or someone said, oh yeah, you need to go and try this route. Having something like that just allows you to really keep motivated with your training, so you can really go and conquer that route, put in a good ride, put in a good performance. And obviously the fitter you are and the more you've done with your training, the more you're going to enjoy that route or ride. Certainly, as I say, if it has got a lot of elevation gain, there's a lot of climbing in there. Obviously, the fitter you are, the better you're going to be able to perform on those climbs. But certainly also if it is a longer ride as well, if you've been improving obviously your fitness and endurance, that's going to allow you to really tackle that ride and feel good throughout the whole ride. Certainly if it is, you know, maybe a 100-miler or something like that towards the end of those rides, if your, you know, fitness is not quite where it needs to be, or endurance, then you can tend to start to struggle towards the end of the rides. Obviously fueling plays a huge part in this as well, but really getting something, a ride or route or a climb that you want to go and focus on, one that you've maybe done before or that you want to go and do, it is a great motivation, certainly for the next 6 to 8 weeks, if there's one out there that you're yet to go and do this year. So yeah, that's the first idea. Second idea then, or tip for this evening, is it might be even a ride that you, or a climb or a route that you have been doing quite regularly this summer already. And you've been doing it, and maybe hopefully you've been seeing that you've been improving maybe your average speed as part of that route or ride. You've been improving your time because of that as well, or maybe an average power, or as part of that route or ride there may be some climbs that you've been doing quite frequently this summer, and you've been seeing that your times have been improving, or maybe not improving as much as you wanted them to improve. Excuse me. Or maybe an average power that you've put out on that particular climb that you really would like to try and increase, as obviously this is going to help you improve your time on that climb as well. So this is also great, because if you continue to do that and ride that route over the next 6 to 8 weeks, or you may say, I'm going to really dial in on training, keep up the great work, everything you're doing with the interval training sessions at the moment, the endurance rides, and then in 4 weeks' time, you're going to go back and do that route or ride that you have done a few times already this year, and you're really going to try and put in a PB time, or as I say, increase your average speed as part of that route, or even the climb, increase your average power that you put out, or just on Strava maybe improve some of your segment times, which is obviously another great motivator and another great sense of achievement and accomplishment if you have gone through the whole summer and you've been seeing those improvements on routes and climbs and rides that you do regularly in your times, average powers and average speeds as well. So yeah, another thing to maybe focus on and have as one of your goals. The third tip then for this evening, or idea, is some social riding. You may want to do a bit more social riding now. Obviously at the start of the year, with all of the COVID restrictions that were in place, and maybe you weren't able to ride with your groups as much, social rides that you may do. If you're a member of a club, you may not have been able to do as much riding with your clubs and in that sort of group environment, which you know, it can be very enjoyable to do that. And so I know that a lot of riders that I've worked with certainly missing that earlier on in the year. And now that these restrictions have obviously eased, and you can get back to doing social riding, group rides. I know that clubs are back out doing maybe regular meetups and things. You may now say that, you know, for the rest of the year, I really want to maximise the time that I can do with social riding, going out doing some group rides with your cycling buddies. It might be some of these routes that we've mentioned there, or a new route that you want to go and do. You want to do that as part of a social ride. and because you missed out on this at the start of the year, you really want to make up for that now. Obviously, through the winter as well, this can be something that gets missed quite a lot as well, with just not being, clubs don't maybe meet up as much through the winter. During the week, you obviously can't do any social riding because the nights it's obviously too dark to go out in the evening. Although I do know some clubs that really like to get the high-vis jackets on and lights on the bike and still try to squeeze in maybe some rides in the week. But generally, there's not as much social riding done through the winter. So yeah, that another thing that you may just want to do over the next 6 to 8 weeks, make the most of that, being able to go out with cycling buddies and really enjoy the social aspect of your riding over the next 6 to 8 weeks. But also then is that little bit of competitive side of things as well. You may have, a couple of buddies in the club that you always share, on a climb or something. You're always trying to beat each other up a climb there. So it's another good motivator to really keep up your training, keep putting the work in there, because it may be that you, over the summer again, you've really improved, or you've caught up with some riders that were always stronger than you. And now if you continue to really keep up that good work with your training, you may even find that in this 6 to 8 weeks or by the end of the autumn, you'll be keeping up with them or even beating them in some cases. So yeah, that social riding obviously is great, brings the fun into it as well. There's that social aspect, but also that little bit of a competitive edge as well. And I know we've got some competitive riders on the program, like to see those improvements, but also goals are to catch some of the riders in their club or as part of the groups that they ride with. So yeah, another good motivator there to keep up the work, great work with the training and seeing those improvements in your power, fitness and your riding. The next tip then, I know that we've got some guys who are have done some weekends away and have still got some trips planned away. I know we've got some riders who are working with have still got, now that again, COVID restrictions have eased, can travel a lot more now obviously within the UK, but also now over into Europe. Working with quite a few riders both on this program and my other programs who've still got some trips out to Mallorca, Spain, Portugal and a few things that they're lucky enough to go and they want to do this autumn now because they weren't able to do that earlier in the year. And they're really working hard and training towards that now as well. So as I say, it doesn't have to be a trip abroad, but you may have a weekend that you want to go and do some riding. You may have some friends that live in another part of the country where there's some good riding and you want to go and do a weekend away visiting them. And again, that's another great motivator to keep up the good work of your training, so that when you go and do these new routes, explore the new area, meet up with friends that you haven't seen for a while, you're obviously going to be able to keep up with them, put in a good performance and really make the most of going and doing that weekend away, doing some longer rides, maybe trying some tougher climbs with a bit more elevation gain in, be able to put in a performance and obviously just enjoy, if it is an area that has got a lot of climbs or it is quite tricky, tough riding in that particular area, the fitter you are, the more you're going to be able to enjoy that riding in that particular area and get the most out of that weekend away as part of any plans that you may put in. You may have some, I know, as I say, we've got some guys who are doing this, I know, but you may think, I want to go maybe 3 weeks or in a couple of weeks' time, try and squeeze in another little weekend away and do some riding before that obviously does really become a lot tougher to do in the winter months with the weather and things. Or if you're lucky enough, you may decide, do you know what, let's go and do some autumn riding in Spain and Mallorca. As I say, I know a lot of this is opening back up again and it's becoming a lot more accessible again through everything that has been going on with COVID and everything. Next tip for this evening then is really looking at if you are a member of a club or not a member of a club, so I guess that social aspect, but really looking at club events. Now, if you are a member of a club, I know that there's some great clubs out there, and at this time of year, they're now putting back on TTs, time trials, weekly time trials that you can do, weekly hill climbs and things. Obviously, just organised club rides and things are also really good. And clubs are really emphasising this now and putting those sorts of things back on after, again, the restrictions that were in place earlier in the year. Now, if you've got a club that maybe does some weekly time trialling or like a time trial league, I know they do a summer league, sometimes they do an autumn league. Obviously, cyclocross, I'm not sure if we've got any cyclocrossers in this group, but that's another thing that a lot of clubs and organisers start to put on, which is great to get stuck into during the autumn. But time trials are fantastic because obviously it gives you a real good measure of your performance, certainly over maybe a 20-minute effort, which is obviously great for building your threshold power, practicing those sort of FTP efforts as well, if you like. So, and it gives you a measure each week, that a bit of competitive sort of environment again, which is also great motivation with your training and to keep up that good work with your training. But also hill climbs. I know that some of you know they do the time trials on the hill climbs, or there'll just be hill climbs during the week that you can go and do with your club, or even just organised rides that they might put on. Again, they may say they're going to travel to somewhere in the area nearby, or may put on a trip at a weekend where the club's going to do. Or if you're not a member of a club and you've maybe been thinking about doing it, I know that the cycling clubs in the UK, they keep popping up, left, right and centre, which is absolutely fantastic to bring that social aspect in. It may be that you go and try and do some organised club rides, try a bit of social riding, join a bit of a group, maybe look around in your area. I know that you can go onto the British Cycling website, one of the websites there, you can literally pop in your postcode and it will bring up all of the registered clubs that are in your area. And you can have a look, see if there's one nearby you that looks nice and you want to just go out, drop them a message, drop them an email. You can say, look, what rides have you got on at the weekend? You'll find that they maybe even have, different levels of groups that go out at the weekend. And this is something you can do in the autumn to keep up your motivation with your riding. And obviously, again, if you're seeing that you're progressing, obviously you might start in a bit of an easier group, but then if you see as you progress with your fitness and your riding, and you can keep moving up the levels within the groups, this is another sign of fantastic progress and that you're riding with stronger riders, which is also going to really bring you on and your riding on as well. So yeah, check out if you're part of a club, see maybe what events they've got on. If you're not part of a club, maybe have a little look, group riding, social riding. You may just be happy riding by yourself, but you may be able to enter into a few TTs or a few little events that are going to give you a bit of motivation there as well. And on that note, with the next tip then, it's looking at maybe, I know we've got a lot of guys who've done some Sportives in the past and did have some Sportives planned earlier on in the year again, but did get cancelled. But I have noticed that a lot of the Sportives that were cancelled earlier on in the year have now been shifted to the autumn time. And there's still quite a few Sportives out there in the UK at the end of September, also running all the way through October as well. Little goal that you maybe want to set yourself, get something in the diary, because this is one of the biggest motivators with training and continuing to keep up your riding. You got a date in the diary with a Sportive that you're going to do, which is, a fairly decent distance and has got quite a bit of elevation gain in it as well. That's also a fantastic motivator with your riding to make sure you're keeping up your training, because again, you obviously want to go and do that event, that ride, firstly complete it, put in a good performance, be able to get round, put in a good time, and really enjoy it and get the most out of your entry fee, if you like. And it's also a good gauge again to ride with some other riders, meet some new people, and also just gauge yourself about where you are with your fitness a little bit. Excuse me, just gonna have a sip of a drink. So yeah, Sportives, some club events there maybe. And then the final little tip or idea I've got for this evening then, obviously in the winter, this is becoming ever more popular and a lot more riders that I'm working with are starting to do this now, which is fantastic. Obviously with Swift becoming more popular, I know we've got quite a few riders in this group and a lot of my programs that use Swift to perform a lot of their training sessions. But Swift racing is another great thing you can try just to give yourself that little bit of competition during the week, or that competitive environment can be a real good motivator with your training. The Swift racing is brilliant. A lot of the Swift racing leagues happen on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they're a great way again to get a decent workout in itself. It's pretty much an all-out sustained effort for the length of the race that you're doing, and it's basically really dialing in on that it's a threshold effort, priming that threshold system, developing that, which again is a great training stimulus and complements the training that you're doing as part of the program really well. Competitive environment, and again you can meet some new people through it doing the Swift racing, and it's a good interactive way to keep it going. Now, this is something that you might not want to start just yet. You still want to do as much riding as you can outdoors at the moment, especially with your endurance ride, Monday's aerobic session, and some of the other rides during the week. However, later in the winter, when you're doing maybe the bulk of your riding indoors, then this is something that I would certainly maybe recommend giving a go, just to really help that motivation in the winter and continue to gauge yourself on the progress that you're making through the winter months. That the winter, I'm a strong believer, is a great opportunity to really get some good solid structure in place, continue making that progress, laying a good foundation during the winter months, which will allow you to sort of really springboard your performance and your riding and your fitness and your health and everything going into obviously next spring and summer, to continue improving and progressing on your cycling journey. And yeah, so the Swift is obviously, it's becoming ever more accessible, turbo trainers and everything, and it's a great way to help keep that motivation in, but also get some really good quality structured training in through the winter as well. And you know, if you are, and as I say, quite a few have come into the end of your program at the moment. We do, through our ongoing coaching and support program in the winter, we do, you know, Swift meetups on there again, and rides and things, just to really add that extra bit of added motivation, or just you know, through the winter when you can't again get as maybe much social riding in, it's nice to just with the community get on there and do some rides and of the workouts during the winter months, to keep that motivation there and make sure that you're continuing to progress. And yeah, not let that sort of drop in motivation happen, or certainly lose all of the fitness that you've now really built up over the summer. It's really good if you can keep maintaining that and progressing through the autumn, but then also get a good, real solid block of winter training in as well.